All right, we've gone over the Electoral College a little bit in class. We've talked about some of the strengths and weaknesses of the Electoral College. So now we're going to look at some of the alternatives. So 61% of Americans currently favor changing the way we select the president. So that's more than a majority. So it's just important to consider that if we're going to change to something else other than the Electoral College, we just have to look and see what the other possible replacement options are. So the first couple replacement options that we're going to look at do not require an amendment. So no amendment would be necessary to change the electoral process if we go to one of these methods, largely because we're still using the electoral college in some way, and we're not dissolving or demolishing the electoral college. So, for example, the first system that could replace the electoral college is called the Congressional District Method system. Instead of winner take all, where whoever wins the most popular votes in the state gets all of the electoral votes assigned to that state, this system would be a little bit different. So if we look at a map here of Pennsylvania, on this map, there are 18 congressional districts in Pennsylvania. Like there'll be a representative in the House of Reps elected from each of these districts. We're down here in District 4. The way that this system would work is that each one of these districts would be worth like a point, one electoral point. So, for example, if I was running against you, whoever got the most votes between us in District 15 would get one electoral vote. Who then, whenever get the most votes in District 12, there's another electoral vote available there. And same in like all of the remaining ones. So each of these is like a mini little individual presidential election. And then whoever won the most votes across the entire state would get like 2 bonus points, right? An extra 2 points. So each one of these districts is worth 1 point. And then across the whole state, whoever gets the most votes is an extra two. So the benefit of this system is that it is possible for both candidates to get some electoral votes in each state, not winner take all. This system is currently used by Maine and Nebraska, and Pennsylvania could change this if they wanted to. There are currently 3 presidential elections in American history that if every state used the congressional district system, that ultimately would swing the outcome of the election. Mitt Romney would have defeated Barack Obama in 2012. Gerald Ford would have beaten Carter in 76, and Nixon would have actually beaten Kennedy in 1960. So changing to this system would have impacted the outcome of 3 presidential elections. The next replacement option is called the proportional method. This basically would award electoral votes in a state that would approximately be the equivalent of the amount of popular vote that they won within the state. So, for example, if you look at the 3 candidates on the bottom of the screen, these are the 3 candidates that received the most votes in Pennsylvania in the 2020 election. Obviously, you have Biden, the Democratic candidate, who earned about 50% of all of Pennsylvania's votes. Trump, who got about 48.8% of all of Pennsylvanians' votes. And this is Jo Jorgensen, who is the Libertarian candidate. She was the highest ranked third party candidate in Pennsylvania. She earned about 79,000 votes. So, based on the system that Pennsylvania currently has, which is winner take all, whoever gets the most votes in the state gets all the electoral votes. Biden won 20 electoral votes. Trump received 0, and Jorgensen received 0 because it's winner take all. If we use the proportional system, or we switch to the proportional system, Biden, instead of getting all of the electoral votes in Pennsylvania, would basically get 50% of the 20, which is 10. Trump would get 48.8% of the 20, which is 9.76, and Jorgensen would get 0.24, which is 1.2% of the available electoral votes, right? So, like, ultimately, the benefit again is that every candidate has the potential to earn some electoral points in each state as opposed to it being winner take all. The last 2 sort of systems that we could switch to are kind of hacks. The Schlesinger system, named after the guy that sort of came up with this, basically would keep the election system as it is, but we would basically award an extra 102 bonus electoral votes to whoever is the winner of the national popular vote. So whoever gets the most votes across the entire country would end up also receiving 102 bonus points. That's 2 extra electoral votes for each one of the 50 states and then DC. So this would almost guarantee that the winner, and would guarantee that the winner of the popular vote really was going to win the Electoral College as well, because of these extra 2 bonus points that you would get. Again, it's kind of like direct popular vote, but you would need an amendment to switch to that. You don't need an amendment to switch to this system because you're still using electoral votes. And then similarly, the national popular vote interstate compact is basically just an agreement amongst the states. The states that are in the blue on this map have already agreed to it. If you add them up, they add up to about 196 electoral votes. And these states basically agree that they are going to award all of their states' electoral votes to whoever wins like the overall national popular vote. So it doesn't matter how the vote goes in their state, they're willing to give all of their state's electoral votes to whoever wins the most votes across the entire country. So in an extreme example, let's say a Republican wins like the most votes across the entire country. California is already in agreement that even if the Democratic candidate within California gets more votes, California will give all of its electoral votes to that Republican because that Republican got the most votes across the entire country. Now, right now, this is pretty inconsequential because you need 270 electoral votes to win the presidential election, and these states in the blue only add up to 196. Obviously, if we ever got to a point where more states were willing to get involved and we got closer to 270, this would become a much like more viable option. And then there are some options that require amendments to be added into the mix, right? And then if we switch to any of these things, we would need an amendment, which is very difficult to get because we're no longer using the Electoral College. So the more complicated of the two options is called direct election with instant runoff. So what makes this different is you're selecting more than a first place finisher. So if you look at the example on the screen here, like basically using old school presidents, if these people were all running for mayor, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and George Washington, you would basically rank which one you liked the best, then the next best, then the next best, and then the next best. So you'll see that this person chose Abraham Lincoln to be the mayor. Their second choice was John Adams. Third choice was Jefferson, which I guess that means their fourth choice would then be George Washington. And this is where it gets complicated. We would have to review everybody's first choices, and following the little flow chart here, if we look at everybody's first choice and there's a candidate that gets a majority of the first choice votes, then the election's over, right? If nobody gets a majority, which is 51%, we basically eliminate the last place finisher, right? The person who received the least amount of first place votes gets cut, and then we have to go through the choices again. So if your first choice is still on the list, it wasn't cut, we use your first choice. If your first choice was the one that got cut first, we then have to go to your second choice. And then we basically decide again, after looking at that, does a candidate have a majority? If the answer is yes, there's a winner. If no, we then cut off the next person and we repeat the process, right? So this is a bit confusing. This would require an amendment. This would be pretty tough to do nationally. Or we could just go straight popular vote. This is what I think most of the 61% that would prefer to get rid of the Electoral College would like to replace it with, which is whatever candidate gets the most popular votes, which is votes from the actual people across the country, should win the presidential election. We have talked about, though, some of the issues with moving to this. And again, you need an amendment, and the chances of getting an amendment passed are slim. It is possible, though. So these are just some of the replacement options. Again, handful of them don't require amendments, and a couple of them do. But again, if we're going to move away from the Electoral College, well, we have to probably move to one of these options as a replacement.